Imagine walking into a bank, your wealth a silent testament to years of relentless ambition, ready to move millions with a single signature. But the moment you reach the counter, your skin drowns out your success, your title, your power, your legacy, erased by a glance that sees only color. This is the story of Dr. Elena Thompson, a Black CEO who faced raw, unfiltered racism at a bank she secretly controlled. In just 10 minutes, she turned prejudice into a reckoning that reverberated through a city, exposing the ugly truth of systemic bias. This isn't just a tale of revenge. It's a searing expose of the quiet, insidious racism Black professionals battle daily, cloaked in policies and polite dismissals. Stay with us because by the end, you'll be cheering for justice and questioning every standard procedure that's ever held you back. Welcome to Black Voices Unheard, where we amplify the stories that demand to be told. Elena Thompson stepped into First National Bank on a crisp autumn morning, her mind a whirlwind of strategy and purpose. As CEO of Thompson Enterprises, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate that had quietly acquired a controlling stake in the bank's parent company just weeks prior, she was no stranger to high-stakes power plays. But today, she shed her usual armor of tailored suits and chauffeured limos. Dressed in jeans, a simple blouse, her natural hair pulled into a neat bun, she carried a modest leather bag containing documents for a $500,000 wire transfer. This wasn't a routine visit. It was a deliberate test. Whispers of discriminatory practices at this branch had reached her, and Elena, a woman who'd clawed her way to the top against relentless odds, intended to see the truth for herself. The lobby buzzed with activity, a microcosm of privilege on display. A white businessman in a pinstripe suit was ushered to a private office, his briefcase gleaming under fluorescent lights. An elderly white couple exchanged pleasantries with a teller, their transaction processed with a smile. Elena approached the counter, her ID and paperwork in hand, her demeanor calm but radiating quiet confidence. "Good morning," she said, her voice warm yet professional. "I'd like to make a wire transfer, $500,000 for a business acquisition. Here's my ID and account details." The teller, Karen, a middle-aged white woman, barely glanced at the documents. Her eyes raked over Elena's casual outfit, narrowing with suspicion that felt like a blade. "A wire transfer? For that amount?" Karen's tone was sharp, her politeness a brittle facade. "We have strict protocols for large transactions. Can I see proof of funds?" Elena nodded, unfazed, and pulled out her phone, opening her banking app to reveal a balance in the millions, earned through years of outsmarting competitors in boardrooms and markets. She turned the screen toward Karen, who waved it away with a dismissive flick of her hand. "No, ma'am, we need official statements," Karen said, crossing her arms, her voice dripping with condescension. "And are you sure you're at the right branch? We don't typically handle transactions like this from walk-ins." The words landed like a punch, laced with the familiar sting of assumption. Elena recognized it instantly. The microaggression that screamed a Black woman couldn't possibly wield such wealth. Her jaw tightened, but she held her composure. Years of navigating corporate spaces as a Black woman having forged an ironclad restraint. "I assure you this is the correct branch," Elena said evenly, her eyes locking onto Karen's. "I've been a client here for years under my corporate account." Brad, a younger white teller, leaned over from his station, a smirk curling his lips like he'd heard a private joke. "Corporate account?" he said, chuckling. "Look, lady, if this is some kind of scam, we can't help you. Maybe try the ATM outside?" The lobby seemed to hush, the air thick with tension. Other customers shifted uncomfortably, their silence a betrayal. Elena felt their stares, the weight of judgment pressing against her like a physical force. She didn't raise her voice. Dignity was her shield, honed through countless moments like this. "This isn't a scam," she said firmly, her tone cutting through the condescension. "Please process the transfer or get your manager." Karen sighed, loud and theatrical, as if Elena's request was an imposition. She picked up the phone, dialing the manager's extension with exaggerated reluctance. Elena stood tall, her eyes burning with restrained fury. This wasn't just about a transaction. It was about the systemic racism that cloaked itself in policy, a reality Black professionals face too often, from boardrooms to bank lobbies. Mr. Hargrove, the branch manager, a white man in his 50s, approached, adjusting his tie with an air of self-assured authority. His eyes flicked over Elena, lingering on her jeans and blouse, his expression already dismissive, as if he'd sized her up before she spoke. "What's the issue here?" he asked, his tone clipped, directed more at Karen than Elena. Karen leaned forward, her voice low but pointed, dripping with insinuation. "She wants to wire $500,000. No suit, no appointment. Seems suspicious." Hargrove nodded, turning to Elena with a patronizing smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but for security reasons, we can't proceed without further verification. Perhaps you can come back with a business representative?" Elena's patience wore thin, but her voice remained steady, a testament to her years of navigating spaces that questioned her right to be there. She slid her business card across the counter, embossed with Ace Dr. Elena Thompson, CEO, Thompson Enterprises. "This should suffice," she said, her tone calm but unyielding. "Check your system. My company owns a significant portion of this bank." Hargrove glanced at the card, his lips twitching into a smirk. Then he laughed, a sharp, mocking sound that echoed in the lobby, drawing eyes from every corner. "CEO? Of what? A lemonade stand?" he said, his voice loud enough to ensure others heard. "We've seen all kinds of fraud attempts. If you're legitimate, why not dress the part?" The racism was no longer veiled, laid bare in his words, and the snickers from Karen and Brad behind him. A Black security guard in the corner shifted, his face tight with discomfort, his eyes darting to the floor. His job hung by a thread, and silence was his only option. "You're making assumptions based on my appearance," Elena said, her voice steady but laced with steel, each word deliberate. "That's not policy. That's prejudice. And it's not just unprofessional. It's illegal." Hargrove's face reddened, his composure cracking. "Prejudice? This is about protecting our clients. If you don't leave, I'll call security." Elena took a deep breath, her mind racing. She wasn't just any CEO, she was the architect of the bank's acquisition, a deal finalized in secret that very morning. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a reminder of the power she held, a power these employees couldn't fathom. The clock was ticking, and in 10 minutes their world would turn upside down. She stepped to a quiet corner of the lobby, ignoring the weight of their stares. Dialing her executive assistant, Marcus, a loyal Black man who'd been with her for a decade, she spoke with quiet urgency. "Marcus, it's me," she whispered. "I'm at the downtown branch of First National. They're refusing my transfer. Blatant racism. Conference in the board." "On it, Dr. Thompson," Marcus replied, his voice sharp with focus, the kind of efficiency that had made him her right hand. "Patching you through now." Seconds later, the call connected to the emergency board line, linking Elena to the top executives of the bank's parent company, now under her control. She felt a surge of resolve. This wasn't just personal. It was a stand for every Black professional who'd been dismissed, doubted, or denied. "Dr. Thompson?" A board member, a white man named Richard, said, his voice thick with concern. "What's going on?" Elena explained, her tone calm but unflinching, detailing the denial, the smirks, the overt racism, masked as protocol. The board, a mix of races, all aware of her authority, reacted with audible shock. "This is unacceptable," said Angela, a Black female board member, her voice trembling with anger. "We're initiating Protocol Alpha, immediate branch audit." Hargrove approached with the security guard in tow, his face smug. "Time to go, ma'am." Elena held up a hand, her eyes locking onto his with a force that made him pause. "Not yet. Put your regional director on the line." Hargrove blinked, confusion flickering across his face. "What? Who do you think you are?" Elena put the call on speaker, holding the phone out like a weapon. "Miss Patel, the regional director, an Indian-American woman with a no-nonsense reputation, came on the line. "Hargrove," Miss Patel's voice boomed, cutting through the lobby's tension. "The woman you're denying is Dr. Elena Thompson, our new majority stakeholder and CEO overseer. Effective immediately, you're suspended. The entire staff involved is terminated for discriminatory conduct." Hargrove's face drained of color, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Karen gasped, clutching the counter for support, while Brad froze, his smirk erased, replaced by wide-eyed panic. This can't be," Hargrove stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "I am," Elena interrupted, her voice quiet but commanding, each word landing like a hammer. "And you've just learned that Black excellence doesn't need your approval." Whispers rippled through the lobby, a wave of shock and curiosity. The Black security guard, whose name tag read James, allowed a small, triumphant smile to cross his face. Customers pulled out phones, recording the moment, their murmurs growing louder. Elena turned to leave, but not before addressing Miss Patel. "Miss Patel," she said, her voice steady, "promote James, the security guard, to interim manager. He's shown more integrity standing silent than the staff has in their actions." Miss Patel agreed instantly. "Done, Dr. Thompson." As Elena exited, news vans screeched to a halt outside. The story had spread like wildfire on social media, fueled by customers' recordings. Reporters swarmed her, microphones thrusting forward. "Dr. Thompson, what happened in there?" one shouted, her voice eager. Elena paused, her presence commanding, even in her casual attire. "It's a story as old as America," she said, her voice steady and resonant. "A Black woman succeeding, only to be met with suspicion and scorn. But today we rewrite the ending. Black voices won't be unheard anymore." Inside, the fired staff packed their belongings in stunned silence. Hargrove muttered excuses to no one, his bravado shattered. Karen wiped tears, her hands trembling, while Brad stared blankly at the floor. Elena's actions had ignited a firestorm, sparking investigations that uncovered internal memos, encouraging profile-based scrutiny, code for targeting Black and minority clients. Racism in banking isn't fiction, it's a systemic rot. From redlining in the 20th century, where Black families were denied mortgages to trap them in poverty, to modern algorithms that flag Black applicants as high risk, the data is damning. Black Americans are 2.5 times more likely to be denied loans than whites, according to federal studies. Elena's casual clothes were a convenient excuse. Research shows Black customers in suits face the same scrutiny, the same dismissive smirks. Her dignity shone because she refused to stoop to their level, embodying the resilience of Black trailblazers like Madam C.J. Walker, who built an empire against similar odds. Elena's fire wasn't born in boardrooms. It was forged in her childhood, in a cramped apartment where her single mother, a seamstress named Ruth, stood at a bank counter, pleading for a loan to keep their home. The teller's cold policy, "Ma'am," was a death sentence, plunging them into poverty. Ruth's tears that night, as she tucked young Elena into bed, burned into her daughter's soul. "They don't see us," Ruth had whispered, her voice breaking. "But you, Elena, make them see." That moment became Elena's vow, not for revenge, but for justice, for a world where Black excellence couldn't be dismissed. Elena's rise was relentless. A scholarship to Harvard, where she outshone peers who whispered she didn't belong. A tech startup sold for millions, built on sleepless nights and sheer will, and now a corporate titan whose conglomerate swallowed companies whole. This bank visit wasn't random. Whispers of discriminatory practices at First National had reached her through a network of Black professionals, stories of denied loans, hostile tellers, and policies applied only to certain faces. Elena went undercover, knowing the acquisition's secrecy, finalized that morning, gave her the upper hand. Hours after the confrontation, Elena faced the fired staff via video call, the board watching closely. Hargrove, Karen, and Brad sat before their screens, their faces a mix of defiance and fear. "You didn't see a CEO," Elena said, her voice steady, each word a scalpel. You saw a stereotype, a black woman you assumed couldn't belong. That's not just hurtful, it's illegal under fair lending laws. You violated federal regulations and this company's values. Hargrove tried to defend himself, his voice shaking. It was a mistake. We were following protocol. Mistakes don't smirk, Elena shot back, her eyes narrowing. They don't assume fraud based on skin color. You didn't ask that white businessman in the suit for official statements. You targeted me because of who I am. Karen, tears streaming down her face, pleaded, I have a family. I didn't mean any harm. Elena's gaze softened, but her resolve didn't waver. So do the black families you've denied. Families who lost homes, businesses, dreams because of your protocols. Consider this a lesson in empathy. You're not victims here. You're accountable. She offered severance with a condition. Mandatory bias training. It was mercy, but it was also justice. A chance for them to confront their prejudice. Months later, the branch reopened under James, the former security guard, now thriving as manager, his leadership a beacon of change. Elena's story wasn't just about one bank visit. It was a microcosm of the black experience. Every black professional carries stories like hers. The loan officer who questions your income, the colleague who assumes you're the assistant, the policy that bends only for certain faces. Elena's dignity, her refusal to shout or crumble, echoed the strength of ancestors who built legacies against impossible odds. Figures like Robert F. Smith, who paid off student loans for an entire graduating class, or Oprah Winfrey, who turned rejection into an empire. Elena didn't stop at firing the staff. She launched Equity Now, a foundation to train banks on anti-bias practices, ensuring no one else faced the humiliation she endured. At a rally outside the bank, days after the incident, she stood before a crowd of hundreds, her voice carrying the weight of generations. We're not victims, we're victors, she said, her words met with cheers. But victory demands we expose injustice wherever it hides, in bank lobbies, boardrooms, or the policies that claim neutrality but reek of bias. The crowd roared, signs reading Black Wealth Matters and End Banking Bias waving high. Social media amplified the moment, with Black Voices Unheard's channel exploding as viewers shared their own stories. This happened to my brother, one commented. They denied my mom a loan despite perfect credit, wrote another. A whistleblower from the bank leaked internal memos, revealing directives to scrutinize high-risk profiles, a thinly veiled code for targeting Black and minority clients. Lawsuits followed, shaking the industry. In the corporate headquarters, Elena chaired her first meeting as overseer, her presence commanding the room of executives, some visibly uneasy. From today, diversity isn't optional, she declared, her voice unwavering. We're auditing every branch, hiring from underrepresented communities, and rewriting policies to root out bias. One executive, a white man named Charles, pushed back, his tone skeptical. This is overkill. We can't overhaul everything based on one incident. Elena's eyes locked onto his, her voice sharp but controlled. Overkill. Tell that to the Black families denied loans at triple the rate of whites. Tell that to the entrepreneurs whose dreams were crushed by your risk assessments. This isn't one incident. It's a system, and it ends now. Her poise silenced the room. Policies changed overnight. Mandatory bias training, diversity quotas for hiring, and a task force to review past denials. The branch became a model for reform, with James leading a staff trained to see clients, not stereotypes. The incident's ripple effects were profound. Protests grew, demanding accountability across the banking sector. Federal regulators launched investigations, citing Elena's case as a catalyst. Black Voices Unheard became a platform for stories of resilience. Tales of Black doctors denied mortgages, entrepreneurs turned away, families fighting for fairness. Each story echoed Elena's. A reminder that racism wasn't a relic, but a living force, embedded in systems meant to serve all. Elena reflected in an interview months later, her voice steady but heavy with purpose. Dignity isn't given, it's demanded. Black excellence will prevail, not because they allow it, but because we refuse to be unseen. This 10-minute incident sparked a revolution, but the fight continues. Banking discrimination isn't a headline. It's a daily reality for Black Americans, backed by data showing disparities in loan approvals, interest rates, and customer treatment. Elena's story is a call to action, a reminder that change begins with exposure, with voices refusing to be silenced. Subscribe to Black Voices Unheard for more stories of resilience and justice. Share your experiences, your story of being dismissed, doubted, or denied. Together we amplify the unheard, turning whispers into a roar that reshapes the world.